I was heartbroken when my boyfriend married my sister, but years later, the truth hit them hard. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
I never imagined my life could feel like a nightmare. Not until the day everything I thought I knew crumbled. My name is Alec Rose, and for as long as I can remember, I believed in love, family, and the simple rhythms of life. My boyfriend, my first real love, was the center of my world. Every weekend we spent laughing over coffee, walking through the streets under flickering streetlights, sharing dreams about the future. I could close my eyes and see a life with him, one filled with quiet moments, whispered secrets, and the kind of happiness that makes you forget the rest of the world. My sister and I were close too, or at least, I thought we were. We had our small rivalries, our playful fights, but we shared secrets and laughter that made me feel safe, like nothing could shake us apart. And my mom, she was always there, a constant presence in our lives, a woman whose love often felt like both protection and control. I thought she wanted what was best for me, but that trust, I would soon learn, could be broken in ways I never imagined. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. Little comments here, casual suggestions there. Things that at first seemed innocent. Maybe he's not right for you, my mom would say, her voice calm but firm. Or, you should think about what's really best for our family. I'd smile and nod, convincing myself it was just motherly concern. But beneath her calm words, there was a force I couldn't see yet, a plan that would unravel everything I held dear. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the life I thought I was building with him. I clung to the small joys, the late-night talks, the hand-holding, the silly arguments that always ended in laughter. And I told myself that love was stronger than anything else. Then the day came when my world started to shift. It wasn't sudden, not in a single catastrophic moment, but a series of small, crushing lows that I barely noticed until it was too late. My mom, with her calm, controlling demeanor, began to guide my boyfriend's attention elsewhere. And my sister, who I had trusted, who I had confided in countless times, didn't stop it. She smiled, laughed, and acted as if nothing was happening. But I began to notice the little glances, the quiet smiles exchanged in rooms when I wasn't looking. I tried to confront them in my mind, tried to scream at the unfairness of it all, but the words never formed. I was paralyzed by disbelief and hurt. How could the people I loved most betray me so completely? I remember one night vividly. I was sitting alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, the soft hum of the city outside my window barely reaching me. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down, the heartbreak, the confusion, the sense of helplessness that comes when you realize the people you trusted might never have had your best interests at heart. I thought about him, about what we had shared, about the life we had imagined. And in that quiet darkness, I felt a deep, aching sorrow I had never known before. I realized that my future, the one I had pictured so vividly, was slipping away. The tension didn't stay behind closed doors. It followed me into every part of my life. Family dinners became unbearable. Casual conversations felt like minefields, and even simple greetings carried the weight of betrayal. My mom's calm authority, my sister's practiced innocence, and my boyfriend's growing distance combined into a pressure I couldn't escape. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was anger, frustration, and a helplessness that gnawed at my chest. And yet, despite it all, I clung to hope, however fragile. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, the truth would reveal itself, that love would find a way back to me, and that the people I trusted would see the mistake they were making. But life has a way of testing you, of pushing you further than you think you can endure. And soon, the small, quiet betrayals escalated into a reality I could no longer ignore. My boyfriend, the person I had loved with all my heart, was being drawn into a life I had never imagined, one that involved my sister, one that my mother had carefully orchestrated. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was a force that threatened to redefine everything I believed about family, trust, and love. Even as I watched, powerless, I felt the story unfolding, around me, like a film I couldn't pause. Every glance, every word, every orchestrated moment added layers to the betrayal. And yet, amidst the pain, I sensed that this wasn't the end. There was a part of me, small but stubborn, that refused to let the manipulation define my life. I didn't yet know how, or when, or even if I would find a way through. But the ember of defiance burned quietly inside me, ready to ignite when the time came. And then, the first real shock came. I caught them in a moment that exposed the depth of the scheme, the reality of what had been happening behind my back. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but it hit me like lightning. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was intentional, calculated, and it cut deeper than anything I had felt before. My world, the one I thought was safe and predictable, had shifted completely. And I realized, with a cold, sinking feeling, that the story I had imagined for myself was gone. I sat there for what felt like hours, my mind racing, trying to piece together what had happened, trying to understand how the people I loved could have let this unfold. I felt small, powerless, and utterly alone. But somewhere beneath the hurt and the shock, a tiny spark of clarity emerged. This wasn't just my heartbreak. This was a story of control, of manipulation, and of choices made by those who believed they knew better. And if I wanted to survive it, to reclaim my life, I had to understand it, face it, and prepare for the moments that would come next. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing one thing for certain. My life would never be the same. The calm, predictable rhythm I had relied on was gone, replaced by tension, betrayal, and the looming question of what would happen next. And deep down, I knew the story was far from over. The next chapter, the part that would truly test me, was waiting just around the corner. And when it arrived, nothing would be as I expected. The next few weeks felt like living in a fog I couldn't escape. Every day, I woke up hoping things might shift back to normal. And every night, I went to bed with the same crushing sense of betrayal. I tried to act like nothing had happened, smiling at family meals, laughing at small jokes, keeping the heartbreak hidden behind a mask. But inside, I was unraveling. Every glance between my mom and sister, every casual touch he offered her, sent a jolt of disbelief and fury through me. How could they all act like it was ordinary? How could they pretend that nothing had been taken from me? I started noticing the subtle ways my life was being reshaped without my consent. My sister would make comments that seemed innocent, but carried a weight I couldn't ignore. "Maybe it's better this way," she said once, brushing it off with a smile. My mother chimed in with her usual calm authority. "We just want what's best for everyone." But what was best for them wasn't best for me. And as the weeks turned into months, it became painfully clear This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, orchestrated, and I was the one left standing in the wreckage. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't been enough. Maybe I had made mistakes, overlooked signs, or misread his feelings. But deep down, I knew the truth. The truth was that their actions weren't about me at all. They were about control, manipulation, and power. My mom wanted what she wanted. My sister followed along. And my boyfriend, well, he was caught in the middle, guided by their influence in ways I hadn't imagined. And it stung, more than I can put into words, to realize that the person I loved most had been pulled away without his own understanding, as if our bond wasn't strong enough to survive the interference around us. I tried to talk to him, once, in a moment of desperate hope. I approached cautiously, my voice trembling as I asked the questions I had buried for weeks. He looked at me with a mixture of confusion, hesitation, and something I couldn't quite read. He wanted to explain, to reassure me, but every word felt like it was weighed down by the invisible strings my mom and sister had tied around him. I left that conversation with more questions than answers, and a heart that felt like it was breaking into pieces I didn't know how to glue back together. And then came the moment that made it all undeniable. I walked into a family gathering, expecting tension, but not prepared for the scene that met my eyes. My sister and my boyfriend were talking closely, laughing in a way that made my stomach twist. My mother was nearby, her eyes calm, almost smug, as if she knew the storm she had created was in full force. For a split second, I froze. The world seemed to tilt, the noise around me fading as a single thought consumed me. Everything I had believed in, everything I had loved, was being rewritten right in front of me. I wanted to run, to scream, to collapse, but I couldn't. I had to stay, had to witness it, had to understand just how far this had gone. And in that moment, a realization hit me like a tidal wave. My life, my choices, my happiness, they had been hijacked. And the people I had trusted to protect and love me had become the architects of my heartbreak. The anger and hurt built inside me until it felt like it might consume me completely. But amidst the pain, something unexpected happened. I saw him, just for a second, glance at me, not with coldness, but with a flicker of recognition, a flash of what we had shared. And in that small, fleeting moment, I knew that the story wasn't over. That ember of hope I had clung to in the darkness sparked to life again, tiny but defiant. Maybe, just maybe, the truth had a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully it had been buried. Days after that gathering were unbearable. Every encounter, every family interaction, became a minefield of emotions I could barely control. I was constantly on edge, caught between heartbreak, anger, and a strange, persistent hope that the situation might somehow right itself. The weight of their betrayal pressed down relentlessly, and I realized how much of my life had been shaped by decisions I hadn't been allowed to make. My sense of control, my voice, my power, it felt stolen, piece by piece. But I refused to let it stay that way. That fire inside me, the spark of defiance I had discovered amidst the heartbreak, began to grow. I started paying attention to the subtleties I had missed, the patterns, the hidden agendas, the ways my mother and sister had manipulated the people around me. And slowly, I began to see a path forward, not one that would erase the pain, but one that could restore my sense of self and give me the chance to reclaim what was mine. And yet, just when I thought I was preparing for the next confrontation, the universe had another shock waiting for me. One day, unexpectedly, he came to me, not with explanations, not with excuses, but with a look that held both fear and determination. It was the kind of look that said everything words couldn't. And in that instant, I realized that the turning point, the moment that could change everything, was finally here. The day it all came to a head is etched in my memory like fire. I didn't expect it to happen like this, and yet, in a way, it felt inevitable. I had been walking on eggshells for months, navigating the invisible walls my mother had built around my life, trying to make sense of the heartbreak that seemed endless. But that morning, something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't keep hiding in silence anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that their manipulation and betrayal hadn't been real. I had to face it, no matter how painful or humiliating it might be. I arrived at the family home, my heart pounding so violently I thought it might leap out of my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to leave before the storm I sensed was waiting could hit. But I couldn't. I had spent too long in the shadows of their decisions, too long letting their control define me. I stepped inside, and the room seemed to freeze. My mother was there, calm as ever, her eyes appraising me like a chess master watching a pawn make its move. My sister smiled, unaware or perhaps deliberately pretending not to notice the turmoil simmering in me. And then he was there, standing between them, looking at me in a way that was impossible to read. The conversation didn't start with words. It started with glances, with the tension that filled the room like a living, breathing entity. I felt every heartbeat, every shallow breath, every tremor in my hands as I realized this was the moment everything would change. I wanted to shout, to cry, to collapse under the weight of months of betrayal, but the words wouldn't come. I could feel all the frustration, the heartbreak, the anger building inside me, a tidal wave threatening to drown me completely. And then I noticed it, a subtle change in his expression. For the first time in months, he looked unsure, vulnerable, caught between the pull of my mother and sister's influence and the flicker of what we had shared, what we had lost. That brief hesitation gave me a spark of courage I hadn't felt in weeks. I stepped closer, my voice trembling but firm, demanding attention without needing to shout. Everything I had felt, everything I had endured, every sleepless night and silent tear poured into that single moment. My mother tried to assert control, her tone calm but sharp, attempting to justify her interference. My sister followed, her voice soft yet suffocating, trying to convince me that I was overreacting. But I could no longer ignore the truth. The betrayal, the manipulation, the orchestrated heartbreak. It had gone too far. And as I spoke, I realized that the power dynamics were shifting. The invisible strings my mother and sister had used to pull everyone around them were starting to unravel. He finally spoke, hesitantly at first, but then with more conviction. The words he chose, the hesitation, the tone, it all revealed the internal struggle he had been living through, torn between loyalty, influence, and love. And in that moment, I understood that the story wasn't just mine anymore. The choices, the regrets, and the realizations were colliding, reshaping everything we thought we knew. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. Relief, anger, heartbreak, and a fragile sense of hope. The betrayal was real, the manipulation undeniable, but I also saw the possibility of reclaiming some part of myself, of setting boundaries, and of finding clarity amidst the chaos. And just as I thought I was beginning to catch my breath, the moment shifted again. A sudden revelation, something I hadn't anticipated, changed the entire dynamic in a way that left us all stunned. I froze, my heart racing faster than ever as the truth unfolded before my eyes. Everything I had endured, every sleepless night and whispered doubt, culminated in a revelation that none of us could ignore. The life I thought I had lost, the love I mourned, and the injustice I had endured. Suddenly, it became a moment of reckoning, a confrontation that could not be avoided. The tension was unbearable, every second stretching into eternity as we stood there, suspended between betrayal and resolution. And just when it felt like I could no longer bear the weight, I realized that the story wasn't over, not by a long shot. The moment of truth had arrived, but what came next would change everything again, in ways I could never have predicted. The heartbreak, the anger, the fear. It was all building to a climax that would leave us frozen, questioning everything we thought we knew. And in that silence, heavy and high, suffocating, I knew that my life, and the lives of everyone involved, would never be the same. The moment of truth hit me like a wave I couldn't escape. I stood there, trembling, heart racing, as everything I had believed in collided with the reality before me. My mom's calm control, my sister's feigned innocence, and the presence of him, the one I had loved and lost, created a storm I could no longer contain. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to shake them until they saw the damage they had caused. But instead, I froze, caught in the weight of disbelief and heartbreak. He looked at me then, and for a brief, fleeting moment, I saw something I hadn't dared hope for in months: regret, confusion, and perhaps even guilt. The tension in the room was so thick it felt like I could reach out and touch it. Every emotion I had buried, every tear I had held back, every sleepless night flooded back in an instant. I wanted to turn and run, to escape the chaos and the suffocating sense of betrayal, but I couldn't. I had to face it, all of it, head on. And then it happened. My mom, in her calm, calculated way, revealed the full extent of her plan. Every manipulation, every subtle push, every carefully orchestrated moment that had pulled him away from me and into my sister's life. It was all laid bare. My chest tightened, tears blurred my vision, and a mixture of rage and despair surged through me. How could someone I loved, someone who was supposed to protect me, do this? How could my sister, the person I trusted most, follow along so willingly? The room seemed to shrink around me, the walls closing in as the truth crashed down like a tidal wave. But amidst the shock, I noticed something else. A hesitation in him, a flicker of conscience that refused to be silenced. His eyes met mine, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt seen. I realized that he had been trapped too, manipulated in ways I hadn't fully understood until now. The betrayal was not as simple as I had thought. It was a tangle of influence, fear, and misplaced loyalty, and in that instant, everything shifted. The anger, the heartbreak, the despair, it all turned into something else. Clarity. I confronted them, not with screaming or tears, but with the raw truth I had carried in my heart for months. I spoke of the betrayal, the stolen moments, the manipulation that had reshaped our lives. I spoke of my heartbreak, my rage, and the emptiness I had endured. And slowly, the room changed. Faces that had been calm masks of control began to show cracks. Hesitation, guilt, uncertainty. For the first time, I felt a sense of power return to me, a reclaiming of my voice and my life. And then, the most unexpected moment arrived. My sister, the person I had thought would always be a part of my life in a familiar, comforting way, faltered. She looked at him and then at me, and I saw it. The realization that she had been part of something she didn't fully understand, something that had hurt the person she supposedly loved. And my mom, for all her authority and control, could no longer hide the tension in her gaze. The carefully constructed web of influence began to unravel in real time, revealing truths that none of us could ignore. I felt a mix of emotions I can barely describe: relief, heartbreak, anger, and a strange, fragile hope. The betrayal had been real, and the manipulation undeniable. But now, for the first time, the truth was out. And with the truth came choice. The chance to reclaim our lives, to confront the consequences, and to decide who we wanted to be in a world that had been shaped by lies and control. And just when I thought the moment had passed, he stepped forward. His voice, quiet but determined, cut through the tension. He didn't offer excuses. He didn't try to justify the past. But he acknowledged the pain, the mistakes, and the reality that we had all been caught in a cycle of manipulation. And in that instant, I realized something profound. This wasn't just a story about heartbreak or betrayal. It was about control, about influence, about the ways our lives can be shaped without our consent. And it was about the strength it takes to reclaim what is ours, to confront the truth, and to rise from the chaos stronger than before. As the room settled into an uneasy silence, I felt the weight lift slightly from my chest. The storm had not passed entirely, but the turning point had come. I had faced the worst, stared into the abyss of betrayal, and somehow survived. And in that survival, I found something I hadn't expected. A glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could begin to repair the damage, reclaim our voices, and rebuild our lives in the light of the truths we had uncovered.